Donald Trump Institute of what? Peace? So above the Institute of Peace in DC, Donald Trump's administration has decided to put Donald Trump's name on top of it. And he's still lobbying for getting the Nobel Peace Prize. He is the peace president. Here are three basic places where he is not the peace president. What he's doing with the boat strikes in the Caribbean, what he's doing with Venezuela along with that, then the strikes that were made in Iran's nuclear sites, and then his police state. So today we're going to briefly talk about these three things. Welcome to Law and Society. Please subscribe. So with the Venezuela talks, Maduro and Donald Trump had a talk on the phone, whatever that was about. Donald Trump has not stopped attacking boats in the Caribbean that him and his regime claims to be drug boats. And it is piling up now. It is over 80 people who have been killed in these drug boats, where the U.S. military is the judge, jury, and executioner. And now various people from Colombia and other countries are raising their voices and saying that, and Trinidad and Tobago are saying that these people were fishermen, and you have just killed the breadwinner of these basic fisherman families. And recently, the commander who was part of the shooting of the first strike, where the videos show that two people were clinging to the wreckage of the boat that was struck, where 9 people had died, and they were alive, and they were not capable of doing anything other than clinging to their lives, and they were shot out of the water. They were killed by an additional intentional strike by the United States military. And, various news organizations are reporting this. The Defense Department's of war manual, the law of war manual, forbids attacks on combatants who are incapacitated, unconscious, or shipwrecked, as long as they abstain from hostilities and do not attempt to escape. The manual cites firing upon shipwrecked survivors as an example of a clearly illegal order that should be refused. So, we need to learn more about the chain of command. Who gave the kill them all order? Was it this admiral on his own volition? Did it come from Pete Hegseth? Did it come from Donald Trump? The line, the chain of command is important, but nothing about what is happening with the boat strikes in the Caribbean is peaceful. And it has gone beyond 6 months that this is happening, and Congress needs to have a vote on the war powers, on whether or not it gives the president authority to carry out these military operations. Because right now, he's carrying out the military operations without congressional authorizations. I think it's 60 days and not 6 months. I think it's 60 days. But whatever the case is, it is Congress's war-making power that Donald Trump is taking and running with. And it is important to see that that is not peaceful. That is not peace. There's no peace in the defense secretary ordering the murder of people who are unable to defend themselves, who are part of a shipwreck, which is, the manual gives you an example as being clearly illegal order if you're ordering somebody to hit a shipwreck. And, senators and representatives who were part of these meetings have come out and said that they were quite shocked by what they saw and what they heard. But on the other side, you have Senator Tom Cotton saying that the Admiral and the Secretary of Defense did exactly what they were supposed to be doing. When it says that double strikes are illegal in circumstances of shipwrecks. So we'll see what Congress does. Whether Congress allows Donald to continue with these judge, jury, executioner type boat strikes in the Caribbean, because that is a slippery slope of him taking away Congress's war-making powers Congress has power to raise the military, and Congress has funding power to be able to fund the military to do these things. And then we get to the Iran strike of the nuclear strikes. That took funding. That took some information gathering. That was a military strike. That didn't go through Congress. That's not peaceful. And, the Carnegie Institute of Peace says that the fundamental limitation for the strikes lies in the distinction between the infrastructure damage and the capability elimination. So there's no telling whether Iran has lost its capability to build nuclear weapons. We don't know the answer to that question. Infrastructure damage, yes. But whether Operation Midnight Hammer effectively curbs a proliferation threat from Iran hinges on two interlinked factors. Tehran's domestic political resolve to curb any weapons development trajectory and the ability of the diplomatic efforts to reestablish rigorous safeguards backed by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Absent both, the strike's tactical effectiveness will lead to little more than a temporary pause. And so that was not a peaceful act. And what that has initiated Iran to do, we don't know for sure, and we don't know if American intelligence will know this or not, or whether Israeli intelligence will be able to find out about it or not, because now Iran has the incentive of being even more secretive and working even faster for nuclear weapons. It has that incentive. It has that, if they haven't given up their capabilities or they moved the critical elements of the nuclear sites from those sites before they were bombed, then they clearly have not given up their capabilities. And so the effectiveness of the strikes is still up in the air. But we know one thing, it's not peaceful. What the action of that order and that obliteration that Donald Trump calls total obliteration, although it wasn't so, that was not a peaceful act. And then let's come home. We are seeing Donald Trump being racist against Somali Americans in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, going after Somali Americans, vast majority of whom are American citizens, half of whom are born in the United States, and he's also going after people in New Orleans. So the police state expands, and now it's gone into racial profiling very openly by going after Somali Americans. Before in California, it was Latino people. So we know that brown and black people are being targeted by this regime. And, Minneapolis' police chief has said that it's not our job to help ICE. It's against the law here. He doesn't have enough cops to carry out the daily functions and also help ICE. And ICE's actions are terrifying people in the Minneapolis area and making them afraid to call 911. And I've talked about this before, that this is having an impact on community where the community is not going to have faith in the law enforcement services of the local and state police as well. And I talked about that in the video of the clergy abuse in Broadview, Illinois, where seemingly Illinois State Police assaulted clergy. When that is illegal, they should be held accountable for that. And any local or state authority that does anything more than record what's happening with the protests as well as with what DHS is doing and keeping the line between the peaceful protesters and the federal authorities while they do whatever their work is so it's not impeded in any way. But it is not the job of local and state authorities to help ICE. And if you are going out and you're a local and state authority and you are helping federal agents break the law and violate constitutional commands against unreasonable search and seizure, against deprivation of due process of law, against the lack of access to counsel, all of these fall under constitutional violations. You are going to be held liable for those violations as well, because those are illegal violations under the Constitution of the United States. And what's pertinent to this video, that is not peaceful. How can you claim peace when you are throwing around immigrants, when you are attacking communities that are American citizens, when your agents are not giving a rat's behind about what the procedures are? They're not properly trained, they're not properly capable, they're not properly equipped, but you are giving them digital access to software for facial recognition software so you can go after people based on databases that the government now has, creating a police surveillance state, a fascist police surveillance state. Now, the head of that fascist police surveillance state couldn't possibly be asking for the Nobel Peace Prize, right? No, he's asking for it. He thinks he's the peace president. Donald Trump thinks what he's doing right now is peace. Up is down, war is peace. So we need to push back against Donald Trump's narrative. We need to point out that what Donald Trump is doing is not peaceful. What Donald Trump is doing is not governing. He is ruling with an iron fist. He is ruling lawlessly by breaking our constitutional commands. And somehow, Congress has not stopped him. And somehow, our Supreme Court has allowed him to do these things. That's a statement, that is an indictment of the Supreme Court and where it stands by giving the president so much leeway in their shadow docket that it behooves the question of whether they are impartial or not. And as it stands now, I don't think any reasonable person can say that the Supreme Court is impartial in how it is administering its equitable relief through the shadow docket. So, all in all, what's happening is not peaceful. This president, Donald Trump, is not a peaceful president. And no matter how many buildings he plasters his name on, and how many times he has his boot-licking cabinet talk about how peaceful he is, the facts speak for themselves. Thank you for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.